This week's Haha No is sponsored by Tim Hortons.
Can we do that?
You know what? I should roll
the rim. This is an exclusive Haha No fans. We're gonna.
How do I actually?
What's it say?
It says Gagne.
No, it does not.
It says Gagne.
It says Gagne. Gagne.
I want a donut.
You want a donut? There we go, everybody.
Donuts.
This video is not sponsored in any way, shape or form by Tim Hortons, although we wish it would be. That'd be great. Tim is, if you're watching, here's up.
One day.
Let's go. Do the proper intro. Do the BAM!
Proper intro is we're back again, and this week it's Jack. He's actually tried to read the story to me already, but I messed up and the camera battery ran out. So, but he's changed a few bits around.
We didn't have to say that.
Do you want us to say that?
No, I think it's funny. I think it's pretty funny.
It makes you feel better. I've completely forgotten. I don't remember, but anyway, from what I heard, I remember it was really good, and I'm really excited.
You always say that.
It's going to be good.
This is episode 5. No.
This is episode 6. This is episode 6 now.
This is episode 6.
Episode 6, yeah. We should start numbering them at the top.
Our 7th week.
7th week doing it.
Jeez.
Give us the title then.
The title for this week's original scary story is The Hunted. Ooh. You knew that already, though.
I did, yeah. I'm surprised that hasn't changed. That's a good name.
Let's jump in.
With the first step I took off the boat, I knew that heading to Tally Island was a bad idea. I wasn't exactly sure why, I couldn't quite place my finger on it, but as soon as that ramp clunked onto the pier, my stomach dropped in chorus with the tugboat's anchor. I was young though and almost 4 months into my gap year, so inhibitions were a thing that were often thrown out of the window. Also, I'd already pre-purchased the ticket, and so I wasn't exactly in the financial position to let a $40 ferry ride go to waste. You'd have a hard time trying to find Tally Island on any commercial maps, and it's only scarcely referred to on navigational charts as the Tally Island Residence. I'd first heard about it from an outfitter guide named Eddie, who I'd met at a cash-only hostel when I was hitchhiking my way along the 101. As chance would have it, he was the only other soul drinking at the hostel bar, and so over a few cold beers, we got to know each other. I think the both of us had been craving some company, and this was the first time I'd ever properly left England, and the United States of America were a little bit lonelier than I'd expected. Eddie made a living out of Alaska, or so he told me, where he'd take businessmen on bush tours hunting grizzlies. He said that 9 times out of 10 he'd have to make the kill shot himself, but they'd always be the ones to pose next to their prize with a rifle in hand, beaming like a real cold hard killer. During the winter though, Eddie would make the 700-mile round trip down through the Pacific Northwest, where he'd solo camp in the Cascades for what he referred to as a bit of a vacation. The night before I'd met him though, Eddie said his camp had been turned over by a bunch of locals. Teenagers, maybe, who had stumbled upon his tent and makeshift hunting lodge out deep in the pines. He seemed to be pretty indifferent about it, as if this had already happened a few times before, but the way that he explained it, they'd pretty much burned the whole thing to the ground without a second thought. I asked him if he'd reported it to the police, but he just shrugged his shoulders and said, "This is why I live in the bush. People burn wood, not tents." Either way, Eddie explained that the whole incident had cut his trip short by at least a fortnight, and he was scrambling for things to do before making the 3-day trip back up north. He said that he'd already expended too many resources getting down here, and so it wasn't worth leaving without breaking even. I have to admit, it was a strange way of looking at things, but I quietly respected it. Eddie said that he'd learned about an island a few miles off the coast of Long Beach that had an influx of the most delicious snow crabs you could ever imagine, and he planned on pitching up for a few days and just living happily off the land. He said there was a small village there that generally kept to themselves, and if you paid for a temporary license at the harbour masters, then you were good to go. Eddie was heading out the next morning, catching the once daily ferry, and foolishly, it was probably the beer talking, but I said I'd join in the day after. Looking back, I probably should have paid attention to how happy Eddie was when I agreed to meet him out at Tally Island. Sometimes the body just knows that it's in danger. even if the mind doesn't. It seemed that as soon as my feet hit the boardwalk, the tugboat behind me tooted its horn and turned mast. Within a few minutes, the deckhand had hoisted the line, pulled anchor, and was gone, back out into the Pacific span. I was half expecting Eddie to meet me at the pier, but it was still early, barely 9:30, and so I headed up into the village proper to see if I could get my bearings. A rusty old sign at the end of the boardwalk read, Tally Island, population 18, private land. And beneath that was a phrase that I would later learn was written in Gaelic. Clydach te Dainen mistrecht, practice makes mastery. There were only a few buildings that made up the village, so I wasn't exactly spoilt for choice, but as chance would have it, Tally Island actually had its own bar, at least. Well, I say a bar, but it was more like one of those trading posts you see in a John Wayne movie. Like a store, a post office, a drinking hole, a diner, all rolled into one. It was called Moody's, and even luckier for me, it was open. I figured that licensing laws didn't exactly apply this far off the coast, and when I entered there was an old lady. She was maybe 65 or 70, sweeping by the log burner. She seemed panicked when she first saw me, as if she was half expecting me in some way, and she quickly rested her broom by the fire and ran behind the short wooden bar. "Oh, hello, sweetie," she said. "We're not exactly open right now, but what the heck? It's a Tuesday after all." I laughed and told her not to worry. I wasn't looking to sink a few beers this early, but I could head back later if it was any trouble. She shook her head and told me to take a stool, which is when I realised there was another man already perched up, clutching a half-drank pint of ale. He was a gaunt, thin man with grey tufts of wiry grey hair sticking out a flat cap. "This is Austin. You don't say much," she said. "And I'm Effie. What can we be getting you today, sweet thing?" I told her that I'd just gotten in from the ferry and I was expecting to be meeting a friend, a man named Eddie, who should have been in to buy a crabbing licence from the harbour master. Effie shrugged her shoulders, then her head, and nodded towards the old man at the bar. "Austin's the harbour master," she said. "You had anyone about for crabbing?" Austin shook his head and supped on his pint. "Not for over a month. Slow season," he grunted. Now, I didn't know exactly how to reply to that. You have to understand that I was in the middle of nowhere, with no way of leaving, with no one around that I even remotely knew. So when the old lady Effie offered me a pint of ale on the house and clunked it down in front of me on the bar, my only option left was to drink it. As soon as it touched my lips, I knew something was off. It tasted strange, almost soapy, and it fizzed on my gums. "There's many more where that came from, sweetie," she said. "We'll soon sort you out. There's plenty of young folk on Tally Island who'd just love to meet you." Those words echoed in my head as the room began to spin, and the bar suddenly seemed a lot further away from where it had been a few seconds before. I was on the floor and it was getting darker. The room was spinning when the old man Austin, he was standing over me, and I could just quite make out that he was pointing at someone to pick me up. I wasn't exactly sure how much time had passed, but when I woke it was already getting dark out. Turned on my side and, strangely enough, I felt water lapping at my thighs and the coarse crunch of sand on my skin. My head felt like someone had taken a chisel and pounded it straight through the base of my skull. But when I slowly regained my senses, I realised that someone had taken all of my clothes off. I was bare-chested and my bottom half was dressed in this strange leather wrap with tufts of fur laced into the rear. When I looked down, I saw bright streaks of blue paint in a zigzag pattern across my arms and chest. It was intricate, and someone had done this to me for a reason. But the only sense my brain could make was that I was cold, I was on a beach, and in the distance, I could hear the faint beat of a drum. I don't know why, and I can't really explain the next few minutes, but I ran as far and fast as I could from that beach on Tally Island, away from the sound of drums, my feet scrambling and slipping on stones as the sand quickly became grass and then mud and then a thick bed of pine needles. And that's when I saw him. A figure in front of me in the dense forest pass. In my police statement, I would say that he was 18, maybe 19, but in reality, I think he was much younger than that. It's a lie that I tell myself to get by, a simulation that my brain runs to protect me from the truth, I think. They never did find the body, and eventually they case ran cold, but I could pick his face from a crowd of hundreds. I guess that whatever was happening out there wasn't exactly written down and recorded, and since my time on Tally Island, I'd racked my brain thinking about the thousands upon thousands of people on this planet that just don't exist. Not in the conventional way, at least. All it takes is dedication. An individual can seemingly spend an entire lifetime living exactly whichever way they like. The memory always plays out the same. He came up with a bright bone-handled knife in his hand. He was grunting, huffing, almost like a bear. His eyes were locked on mine like a predator eyes its prey, but that's when it took over. You read about fight or flight. You read about the inner mechanics of the human spirit and the lengths that the unconscious brain can go to protect itself. The truth is, I don't really know what happened. We struggled, I know that, writhing on the floor like two desperate beasts. But in the end, I took his life. I'd managed to clutch a rock from the undergrowth and I bashed his head in like a freshly caught fish. I drove his own knife into his throat, and that's when he coughed the spray of blood and the gore of his own torn flesh. The mess of success. I sat there crying, laughing, a mix of both. I don't really know. It's when Eddie stepped out of the evening gloom, Austin and the old lady Effie behind him. There were others too. Some were children, some teenagers, the same age as the boy that I'd just murdered in cold blood. Eddie placed a hand on my shoulder. I could feel it shaking with rage or misery. I don't think I'll ever know. Through gritted teeth, he told me that I was free to leave. Austin would radio for the ferry to pick me up, and my pack and a fresh pair of clothes would be waiting for me. Effie moved over to the boy's body and she closed his eyes solemnly. She almost seemed disappointed in him. She picked him up, motioning for a few of the older children to help her, and then they carried his body off into the darkness, and that was the last time I ever saw him. Eddie crouched down and he looked me dead in the eye. He placed the bloody bone-handled knife in my hand, and that's when he said something that would stay with me for the rest of my life. He said that the wolf that is willing to kill is the wolf that is willing to live.
Wow. Horrifying. Horrifying.
You look a bit shook.
I am. That was harrowing. That's like...
I did feel like I'd gone a little bit too far. I'm so finished right.
It's dark. Like,
yeah, it is dark. Right?
No, but like in the best way. Like, you know when you sort of like naturally try and guess where it's going.
Yeah.
Did not expect it to go. I thought it was going to be, you know, man versus beast.
Yeah.
But in a way, it kind of was, because the beast within or whatever. But yeah, I thought it would be sort of the beast of the island, and you know, Eddie gets killed and he has to fight, whatever, like that. I mean, that was terrifying in itself. But yeah, creepy island cult people.
Well, I'll tell you the inspiration for it, because one of my favourite films of all time is The Wicker Man, starring Christopher Lee, and I love the idea of like that horror concept. There's just like a remote society out there somewhere that just does things by themselves, and it's like a classic thing. Stranger goes into this society, slowly finds out that he's the sacrifice, the unwitting sacrifice, whatever. And I just thought that concept, but fight back, you win.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of like wrestling like where the horror actually lies, and the horror is in the fact that the narrator, this guy, killed a kid.
Yeah.
Out of no choice of his own, but instinct.
Yeah. Like, in a way, that's one of the hardest things. Like, that's such a bad thing to put on someone for the rest of their life.
Exactly.
That's the wound that will never heal. Right?
That's why I felt like I'd gone too dark.
Well, I mean,
what do you think? Was it too dark?
And it's like, you know in horror movies when they, you know, that one character finally escapes, and they might look back and be like, God, that was horrible, that was horrific, all the bad people and something. Yeah, they might look back and go, God, that was horrific, I'm so traumatized. But they probably had to kill some really bad people who were trying to kill them, right? And it was probably some really messed up stuff, and that's it. If they can deal with that, then they can start to move forward. But just being like, I killed a kid for no other reason that I like.
He didn't want to be in that position. He thought he was getting snow crabs. That's the worst feeling for me.
Yeah.
It's the worst feeling ever. Like something that's completely out of your control that you're forced to do.
So the motto on the island.
Yes.
That was that was them sort of honing their skills.
Practice makes mastery.
Right.
Yeah. So it was. I mean, again, I feel like I'm falling into this whole like fear of the unknown kind of thing, and like not giving a lot away. But that idea is that this isolate survivalist cult that lives out there, and they can't earn their stripes unless they hunt the greatest prey of all, which is humans.
Humans. Yeah. So Eddie's like he scouts out people who seem a little bit.
Yeah.
He's like ready.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there you go. The Hunted.
That was really good.
I feel like I've irked you a little bit. I'm sorry.
No. I think it's a sign of how good your stories are. That I just start like thinking what's coming next. You know, like I'd want to know how do they deal with. Obviously, like I said, police report.
Yeah.
How do they? But the thing is, you built such a convincing world already that's not even a got you. That's like I know that the fact that they've been there for generations, they must have, and I'm like that's kind of cool as well because like I don't know what it is, but they must have something that means I don't know. What if it's one of those things where people are in on it,
That's what I mean.
There's horror movies when you find out that the police are actually on it.
Yeah, that's the word. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's the work. And that's the one bit in horror that makes people feel good. It's like reach for the phone, call the police. You take that away from them. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this police report might be the last thing he ever wrote, kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know, don't.
Open-ended.
Yeah. I'm about to say don't trust the police, but
don't say it.
I don't mean that. Trust the police.
Trust the police.
But be aware that some of them will side with cults.
We need this as a written statement.
Some police will side with cults.
How did we get to this point? Amazing. Scores on the door.
7.8.
Oh no! It's not. It's not that. No,
you can't argue about it.
You've got to take it.
That was. I knew. Again, I could go over what I just said before, but it's also just really, really well written. Just really, really well written.
Thanks, man.
And I thought you kind of masterfully dipped in and out of like the here and now. Like when you're talking about like running to the forest. I just love for any aspiring writers out there. I just love the way like. You just went the sand turned to mud, turned to underclay, just little things like that. I'm just like, wow, this is like, really, and then you sort of effortlessly dip back out into like the police report and stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, when you did that, I was like, oh, it's gonna ruin the pacing because like he's just suddenly got into that. But like it didn't. You did it well, and
thanks, buddy.
And most importantly, it was really scary.
Good.
It shook me. So yeah.
This is, if I'm being honest, this is the shookest that you've looked. So. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I guess we're slowly figuring out what really scares people.
You're just gonna wake up and I'm just gonna be like above your bed, just like taking notes. Like, what did you just say?
Sleep. That's a horror story.
That is a horror story in itself.
Well, let's talk about next week then.
Oh yes, we have something fantastic for you all next week.
Yeah. Should we still play the guessing game, or should we just tell them now?
Let's keep it guessing.
All right. We're gonna have a special guest.
Yeah.
I did see 1 or 2 people correctly guess the last video.
They did.
So that's a good reason to go and watch that video if you haven't done so already. So you can also check out the guesses. But yeah, we're gonna have a special guest next week.
A guessing guest.
Someone that Jack and I both know very well, and we're really excited.
I'm so stoked.
Yeah. Well, it's the first guest, first of all.
Yes. Hopefully it's something that we'll go on to do a lot more of, because we love the thought of kind of getting people who are dear to us in certain different ways and hearing what horror stories that they have to tell us. Because that's what this whole thing is about, right guys? It's about 2 guys sat around a fire telling each other's horror stories and you joining in and watching. So
yeah, exactly.
That's our plan. We hope you appreciate it.
And it's also good for us as well to have like fresh ideas.
Exactly.
Because I know I've certainly got into.
We're already scraping the barrel, so we've got to.
I feel like I've got into a bit of all my videos do seem to be a sort of dystopian Black Mirror-esque world, but not next week. So please come back. But
that's what come back for.
I think it's good to have. Especially for me anyway, have other people come in and be like, this is what I find scary. I'm like, that is scary.
Yeah.
Do you know what, that is actually scary?
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to that. Make sure you guys tune in next week to see who the special guest is. And what
if you've got any of your own stories to send us, make sure to send it at ohno@gmail.com. We have been receiving some fantastic and awesome stories. Obviously we can't read them out all of them during the live stream, but the best of the best we will read out for you guys. So
in the live stream, which is the week after. Week after our special guest.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
So you're all up to date. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you so much.
See you all
Joining
next
us by this fire. I guess we better do this whole thing.
Got some saliva on it as well.
That was boozed.